Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been running long haul for 15 years, and you learn to trust your instincts out here. The road teaches you that some things just feel wrong, even when everything looks normal on the surface. That lesson got hammered home one night on I-80 in Nebraska at a way station that should have been routine. It was around 2 a.m. when I saw the signs, "Way station open, all trucks must stop." The electronic board was flashing green, then red, cycling through the usual sequence. I was hauling electronics from California to Chicago, running clean with all my paperwork in order. Just another inspection, or so I thought. The Riverside Way station sat under those harsh sodium lights that turn everything the color of old bones. I rolled onto the scale and waited for the usual green light to keep moving. Instead, the speaker crackled to life. "Driver, pull to inspection bay 3 for a secondary." I glanced around the facility. 2 other trucks were parked under the main lights, drivers probably sleeping in their cabs. But inspection bay 3 was around back, away from the main building, in an area I'd never seen used before. "Copy," I replied, though something in my gut was already sending up warning flags. Bay 3 was isolated, poorly lit, with just a single flickering light pole casting uneven shadows across the cracked asphalt. As I set my brakes, I noticed the inspector walking toward me. Reflective vest, clipboard, official-looking uniform. But his movements were too casual, too relaxed for a state inspector conducting a middle-of-the-night secondary. He knocked on my door with the edge of his clipboard. "Evening, need to see your logbook, bill of lading, and license." I cracked the window and handed over the paperwork. Up close, his uniform looked authentic enough. But something was off about the patches. The state seal looked faded, and there was black tape where his name tag should have been. "Routine cargo inspection," he said, scanning my documents. "Been having issues with smuggling on this route. Need you to step out and open your trailer." In 15 years, I'd been through hundreds of inspections. This didn't feel like any of them. Real DOT inspectors are methodical, professional. They don't smile like they're sharing a private joke, and they don't conduct inspections in isolated areas away from security cameras. "I'll need to see your credentials first," I said, keeping my voice steady. His smile faltered slightly. "Driver, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Step out of the vehicle." I reached for my CB radio and clicked to channel 19. "Any drivers at the Nebraska scale house? You copy?" Static, then a voice. "Yeah, driver, what's your 20? "Scale house at mile marker 126. You see any DOT inspectors working secondaries tonight?" "Negative. Rolled through there an hour ago. Place was dark except for the main building." The man outside my door stepped back, his hand moving towards something on his belt. In that moment, I made a decision that probably saved my life. I fired up the engine and started rolling forward, slow but steady. "Hey," he shouted, but I kept moving toward the main building where the real lights were, where other people could see what was happening. I pulled up next to the official inspection station and climbed down. Through the building's windows, I could see a real inspector, a middle-aged woman in a proper uniform sitting behind a computer terminal. When I explained what had happened, her face went grim. "We don't conduct inspections in Bay 3. That area's been closed for maintenance." She picked up her radio. "State Patrol, this is Riverside Way Station. We have a 10 to 54 in progress." The police found Bay 3 empty when they arrived, but there were fresh tire tracks from multiple vehicles and evidence of recent activity. Turns out, a criminal organization had been using isolated areas of way stations to identify valuable cargo loads. They'd pose as inspectors, examine truck contents, and then coordinate hijackings down the road. The inspector who'd tried to get me to open my trailer was never caught, but 3 weeks later, my load of electronics was exactly the type of cargo that had been targeted in a string of hijackings across the Midwest. If I'd opened that trailer, if I'd stepped out of my cab in that isolated bay, I might have become another statistic. The thing that still bothers me most wasn't the fake uniform or the isolated location. It was that smile, the look of someone who knew exactly what they were doing and enjoyed the power it gave them. Some predators hunt in the wilderness, others hunt at way stations, using your trust and authority against you. Now I verify every inspection, every official who approaches my truck. Because sometimes the people in uniform aren't there to enforce the law. They're there to break it, and they're counting on your cooperation to do it. The Desert Rose truck stop outside Barstow wasn't much to look at, but it had clean showers, decent coffee, and secure parking. I'd stopped there maybe a dozen times over the years without incident. That changed the night I met Danny, the new night clerk who seemed a little too interested in the drivers staying overnight. I pulled in around midnight, running a load of furniture from Phoenix to Sacramento. The parking lot was about half full. Mostly other big rigs with their drivers either sleeping or grabbing food in the diner. I needed fuel, a shower, and maybe 6 hours of sleep before pushing on through the mountains. Danny was working the fuel desk, thin, nervous-looking guy in his 20s with thick glasses and fidgety hands. He processed my fuel card with the kind of eager efficiency that made me slightly uncomfortable. "Long haul?" he asked, making conversation while the pump ran. "Sacramento. Should make it by afternoon if I get some sleep." He nodded, but his eyes kept darting toward my truck, then back to me, like he was memorizing details. "You staying in the sleeper or getting a room?" "Sleeper's fine. Just need to grab a shower." "Shower tokens are $3, he said, handing me a plastic token along with my receipt. "Take your time. We keep them clean." Something about the way he said, "take your time," bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on why. I parked my rig under the brightest light I could find and headed for the shower facility. The showers were clean as advertised, but while I was washing off the road dust, I heard voices outside, low, urgent conversation that stopped abruptly when I turned off the water. By the time I got dressed and stepped outside, the area was empty. Back at my truck, I did my usual security check before settling in for the night. Everything looked normal, but as I climbed into my sleeper berth, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. My logbook was sitting on the passenger seat. Not where I'd left it. I always kept it tucked away in the door pocket. Someone had been in my cab while I was showering. I checked my wallet, my personal items, my cargo paperwork. Everything was there, nothing missing. But someone had definitely been inside my truck, going through my things. The question was, why? I locked all the doors and tried to sleep, but every sound outside made me tense. Around 3 a.m. I heard footsteps on gravel, slow and deliberate, circling my truck. I lay perfectly still, listening until the footsteps moved away. In the morning, I mentioned the incident to Danny when I bought coffee. His reaction was telling. He got nervous, defensive, claimed he'd been in the office all night and hadn't seen anyone near my truck. "Lot of drivers think someone's been in their cab," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Usually just forget where they put things. Road fatigue, you know?" But I knew what I'd seen, and talking to other drivers over breakfast, I learned I wasn't the first to notice things moved around, personal items disturbed. Always after staying overnight. Always when Danny was working the night shift. I reported it to the truck stop manager, but without proof of theft, there wasn't much they could do. I finished my run to Sacramento, but the incident stuck with me. Something was wrong at the Desert Rose, and it centered around that nervous night clerk. 2 months later, I got a call from a detective in San Bernardino County. Danny had been arrested after police found his apartment filled with items stolen from truck drivers. Logbooks, family photos, personal letters, items of clothing, hundreds of pieces, all carefully catalogued and organized like some twisted collection. He'd been using his access to the truck stop to identify targets, then breaking into their cabs while they showered or ate. But he wasn't selling the items or using them for identity theft. He was keeping them, studying them, building detailed profiles of drivers' lives and routines. During questioning, Danny admitted he was researching long-haul truckers, fascinated by their nomadic lifestyle. He'd kept journals filled with observations about different drivers' habits, schedules, and personal details gleaned from their stolen belongings. The detective told me they found my logbook in Danny's collection, along with a detailed file about my routes, my truck, even my family photos he'd somehow obtained. The violation felt deeper than simple theft. It was like someone had been living inside my life without my knowledge. Danny got 18 months for burglary. The Desert Rose installed better security and hired new staff. But I've never stopped there again, and I know other drivers who feel the same way. There's something deeply unsettling about having your personal space invaded while you sleep, especially when the person doing it isn't after money or valuables. They're after something more personal, more invasive, pieces of your life that tell them who you are when you think nobody's watching. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. CB radio chatter can save your life on the highway. Other drivers warn you about speed traps, weather conditions, accidents ahead. You learn to trust the voices crackling through the static. They're fellow travelers looking out for each other. That trust almost got me killed on a lonely stretch of I-40 in New Mexico. I was running eastbound toward Albuquerque, hauling auto parts from Los Angeles. It was around 1 a.m., clear night, light traffic. I had channel 19 on low, half listening to the occasional trucker checking in about road conditions. That's when the voice came through, clear and authoritative. Eastbound big truck at mile marker 47. You copy? I glanced at my GPS. Mile marker 47 was about 2 miles ahead. Go ahead, I replied. We've got a multi-vehicle accident at mile 52. State police are routing all commercial traffic off at exit 51. Take County Road 18 south, rejoin the interstate at exit 63. The voice had the clipped professional tone of someone used to giving orders, not the usual casual trucker chatter. You with state police? I asked. Affirmative. We're keeping traffic moving around the incident scene. I could see exit 51 ahead, a small off-ramp leading to what looked like a rural county road. My GPS showed no accidents on I-40, but those systems sometimes lagged behind real-time conditions, and the voice on the radio sounded official, confident. Copy that, I said, signaling for the exit. County Road 18 was a narrow 2-lane blacktop that wound through empty desert scrubland. No street lights, no other traffic, just my headlights cutting through the darkness. According to the radio voice, this detour should reconnect with I-40 in about 15 miles. After 10 minutes of driving through increasingly desolate country, I started having doubts. I tried raising other drivers on the CB. Any eastbound traffic have eyes on that accident at mile 52? Static. Then a voice. Negative, driver. I-40's clear eastbound. No accidents reported. My blood went cold. I grabbed the CB mic again. This is the eastbound truck that took the detour at 51. Anyone else get routed off the interstate? What detour? Came the reply. No construction or accidents on 40 tonight. I'd been had. Someone had used the CB to lure me off the main highway, and now I was alone on a dark country road with no idea where it led. The official voice that had directed me here was nowhere to be found. I slowed down, looking for a place to turn around, but the road was too narrow for a big rig. I had no choice but to keep going and hope it eventually connected back to civilization. That's when I noticed the headlights in my mirrors, 2 vehicles following at a distance, keeping pace with my speed. When I slowed down, they slowed down. When I sped up, they matched me exactly. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. This was a setup. Someone had used the CB to vector me onto this isolated road. Now they were following me, waiting for the right moment to make their move. I reached for my cell phone, but there was no signal out here. The CB was my only communication, and I wasn't about to announce my location to whoever was orchestrating this. The road ahead curved through a series of low hills, getting narrower and more isolated with each mile. Perfect country for a hijacking, no witnesses, no help, nowhere to run. I had to do something before they boxed me in. That's when I saw the ranch gate ahead, a dirt road leading to what looked like a cattle operation with lights visible in the distance. I made a split-second decision and turned onto the dirt road, my trailer bouncing and swaying on the rough surface. The headlights behind me hesitated, then continued past on the county road. Either they hadn't expected me to turn or they didn't want to follow me onto private property where there might be witnesses. The dirt road led to a working ranch, complete with a house, barns, and a very surprised rancher who came out with a shotgun when he heard my diesel engine in his yard at 2 a.m. After I explained what had happened, he let me use his landline to call 911. The sheriff's deputies who responded told me I'd been lucky. There had been a string of truck hijackings in the area, all following the same pattern. Criminals would use CB radios to impersonate police or DOT officials, routing trucks onto isolated roads where they could be robbed. The fake detour I'd been given would have led to a dead-end canyon about 5 miles further on, the perfect place for an ambush. If I hadn't turned onto that ranch road, I would have been trapped with nowhere to go. The deputies escorted me back to I-40 and I completed my run without further incident. But the experience changed how I respond to CB communications, especially from voices I don't recognize. Now I verify any official instructions with multiple sources before following them. I cross-reference CB information with my GPS, traffic apps, and other drivers. Because sometimes the helpful voice on the radio isn't there to help you. They're there to lead you into the darkness where no one can hear you call for help. The highway can be a lonely place, but it's better to be alone and safe than to trust the wrong voice in the night. Some stretches of highway feel cursed, like they exist in a different reality from the rest of the world. Interstate 84 through eastern Oregon is one of those places, endless miles of high desert, scattered with ghost towns and abandoned truck stops that time forgot. I learned to respect that emptiness the night I stopped for fuel at a station that shouldn't have existed. I was running a load of electronics from Portland to Salt Lake City, pushing through the night to make my delivery window. It was late October, cold enough that I could see my breath when I stepped outside, with a wind that cut through your jacket like it had personal business with your bones. My fuel gauge was getting low as I approached the town of Vail, or what was left of it. Most of the businesses had closed years ago, victims of economic decline and changing traffic patterns. I knew there was a truck stop about 20 miles ahead, but I wasn't sure I'd make it that far on what I had left. That's when I saw the lights ahead. A truck stop I'd never noticed before, glowing like a beacon in the desert darkness. The sign read, Desert Oasis Travel Center, 24-hour fuel, food, showers. It looked new, well-maintained, completely out of place in this abandoned stretch of highway. I pulled into the fuel island, relieved to have found salvation in the middle of nowhere. The pumps were modern, the lot was clean, and there were even a few other vehicles scattered around. A couple of cars, another truck parked by the building. The fuel flowed normally, and I went inside to pay. The place was bright, clean, stocked with all the usual truck stop amenities. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged man with a friendly smile and a name tag that read, Earl. "Evening," he said as I approached with my coffee and snacks. "Long haul." "Salt Lake City. Didn't know you folks were open out here." Earl's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. "Been here for years. Most drivers just pass us by, but we serve the ones who need us. I paid cash and headed back to my truck, but something about Earl's words bothered me. We serve the ones who need us. It sounded less like customer service and more like something else. As I climbed back into my cab, I noticed the other truck parked by the building. It was an older Peterbilt, covered in road dust, with license plates I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Something about it seemed familiar, but I couldn't place why. I started my engine and pulled back onto I-84, checking my mirrors as I merged. The Desert Oasis Travel Center glowed behind me for a moment, then disappeared into the darkness as the road curved. 20 miles later, I reached the truck stop I'd been heading for originally, a pilot station that I'd stopped at dozens of times before. As I pulled in to top off my tank, I mentioned the Desert Oasis to the night clerk. Desert Oasis? He frowned. Never heard of it. And I've been working this route for 8 years. There's nothing between here and Vale except empty road. A chill ran down my spine. I just stopped there 20 miles back. Bought fuel, paid cash. The clerk shook his head. Must be thinking of somewhere else. That stretch of 84 is empty. Has been for years. I pulled out my receipt from Earl, but when I looked at it, the paper was blank. Not faded. Blank, like it had never been printed on. The coffee cup I'd bought was still in my cup holder, but when I picked it up, it was empty and bone dry, as if it had been sitting there for hours. My fuel gauge showed the same level it had before I'd supposedly filled up at the Desert Oasis. According to every piece of evidence, I'd never stopped there at all. But I remembered it clearly, the bright lights, Earl's friendly smile, the other truck in the parking lot. And now that I thought about it, I remembered where I'd seen that Peterbilt before. It belonged to a driver named Jake Morrison, who disappeared on this same stretch of highway 3 years ago. They'd found his truck abandoned at a rest stop, but never found Jake. I called the Oregon State Police the next morning and reported what I'd experienced. The dispatcher was polite but skeptical, until I mentioned Jake Morrison's truck. That got transferred to a detective who asked me to come in and make a formal statement. During the interview, I learned that Jake wasn't the only driver who'd vanished on that stretch of I-84. Over the past decade, at least 6 truckers had disappeared between Vale and Ontario, always during night runs, always without a trace. Their trucks were usually found abandoned, but the drivers were never seen again. The detective showed me photos of the missing drivers. I recognized 2 of them. They'd been customers at Earl's Desert Oasis Travel Center, sitting at tables in the restaurant area, drinking coffee and staring out the windows with vacant expressions. We've had reports before, the detective told me. Drivers claiming to stop at truck stops that don't exist, seeing missing people who should be dead, always on that same stretch of highway, always at night. He leaned forward, his expression serious. Here's what I think happened to you. You were tired, running low on fuel, probably a little hypoxic from the altitude. Your mind created what you needed to see. A safe place to stop, fuel for your truck, a friendly face behind the counter, but you never actually stopped. You just kept driving. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was all a hallucination brought on by fatigue and stress. But I still have that empty coffee cup, and sometimes when I'm driving through eastern Oregon at night, I catch glimpses of lights in my peripheral vision. A truck stop that shouldn't be there, serving the ones who need it most. I avoid that stretch of I-84 now, especially at night. Because whether the Desert Oasis Travel Center is real or not, the drivers who stop there don't seem to make it back to the world of the living. And Earl is still behind that counter, smiling his friendly smile, waiting for the next traveler who needs what he's offering. Some roads lead home, others lead somewhere else entirely. And sometimes, when you're running on empty in the middle of nowhere, it's hard to tell the difference until it's too late. Thanks for listening. If you made it through the darkness,